Faroe Islands, or the Faroe Islands, is a North Atlantic archipelago located north-northwest of Scotland, and about halfway between Norway and Iceland. It is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. The islands have a total area of about with a population of 51,783. The northerly latitude also results in perpetual civil twilight during summer nights and very short winter days. Between 1035 and 1814 the Faroes were part of the Kingdom of Norway, which was in a personal union with Denmark from 1450. In 1814 the Treaty of Kiel transferred Norway to the King of Sweden, on the winning side of the Napoleonic Wars, whereas the King of Denmark, on the losing side, retained the Faroes, along with the two other historical Norwegian island possessions in the North Atlantic, Greenland and Iceland. The Faroe Islands have been a self-governing part of the Kingdom of Denmark since 1948. The Faroese control most of their domestic affairs. Those that remain the responsibility of Denmark include military defense, policing and the Justice Department, currency, and foreign affairs. However, as they are not part of the same customs area as Denmark, the Faroe Islands have an independent trade policy and can establish trade agreements with other states. The islands also have representation in the Nordic Council as members of the Danish delegation. The Faroe Islands have their own national teams competing in certain sports.
Etymology.
In Faroese, the name appears as represents the plural of Older Faroese for island. Due to sound changes, the modern Faroese word for island is oigj. The first element may reflect an Old Norse word sheep, although this analysis is sometimes disputed because Faroese now uses the word from Old Norse to mean sheep. Another possibility is that the Irish monks, who settled the island around 625, had already given the islands a name related to the Gaelic word, meaning land or estate. This name could then have been passed on to the Norwegian settlers, who then added islands. The name thus translates as either Islands of Sheep or Islands of Faeroe. In Danish, the name contains the same elements, though is the definite plural of island. In English, it may be seen as redundant to say the Faroe Islands, since the O comes from an element meaning island. Most notably in the BBC shipping forecast, where the waters around the islands are called Faeroes. The name is also sometimes spelled Faeroe.
History.
Archaeological evidence shows settlers living on the Faroe Islands in two successive periods before the Norse arrived, the first between 300 and 600 AD and the second between 600 and 800 AD. Scientists from the University of Aberdeen have also found early cereal pollen from domesticated plants, which further suggests people may have lived on the islands before the Vikings arrived. Archaeologist Mike Church noted that Dykil see below mentioned what may have been the Faroes. He also suggested that the people living there might have been from Ireland, Scotland, or Scandinavia, possibly with groups from all three areas settling there. A Latin account of a voyage made by Brendan, an Irish monastic saint who lived around 484 to 578, includes a description of insular islands resembling the Faroe Islands. This association, however, is far from conclusive in its description. Dykil, an Irish monk of the early 9th century, wrote a more definite account. In his geographical work De Mentura Orbis Terrae he claimed he had reliable information of Heremiti ex Nostra Scotia hermits from our land of Ireland, Scotland, who had lived on the northerly islands of Britain for almost 100 years until the arrival of Norse pirates. Norsemen settled the islands c. 800, bringing Old West Norse, which evolved into the modern Faroese language. According to Icelandic sagas such as Fyrja saga, one of the best-known men in the island was Tróndur I Gotu, a descendant of Scandinavian chiefs who had settled in Dublin, Ireland. Tróndur led the battle against Sigmund Brestjason, the Norwegian monarchy and the Norwegian church. The Norse and Norse Gael settlers probably did not come directly from Scandinavia, but rather from Norse communities surrounding the Irish Sea, Northern Isles and Outer Hebrides of Scotland, including the Shetland and Orkney Islands. A traditional name for the islands, in Irish, Nasigari, possibly refers to the Earjuskegger Island Beards, a nickname given to island dwellers. According to the Faeroe saga, more emigrants left Norway who did not approve of the monarchy of Harald Faeroe ruled c. 872 to 930. These people settled the Faroes around the end of the 9th century. Early in the 11th century, Sigmund Brestison 961 to 1005, whose clan had flourished in the southern islands before invaders from the northern islands almost exterminated it, escaped to Norway. He was sent back to take possession of the islands for Olaf Tryggvason, King of Norway from 995 to 1000. Sigmund introduced Christianity, forcing Trondereigotter to convert or face beheading, and, though Sigmund was subsequently murdered, Norwegian taxation was upheld. Norwegian control of the Faroes continued until 1814, although, when the Kingdom of Norway 872 to 1397 entered the Kalmar Union with Denmark, it gradually resulted in Danish control of the islands. The Reformation with Protestant evangelical Lutheranism and Reformed reached the Faroes in 1538. When the union between Denmark and Norway dissolved as a result of the Treaty of Kiel in 1814, Denmark retained possession of the Faroe Islands. Norway itself was joined in a union with Sweden. Following the turmoil caused by the Napoleonic Wars 1803 to 1815 in 1816, the Faroe Islands became a county in the Danish kingdom. As part of mercantilism, Denmark maintained a monopoly over trade with the Faroe Islands and forbade their inhabitants trading with others, e.g. the geographically close Britain. The trade monopoly in the Faroe Islands was abolished in 1856, after which the area developed as a modern fishing nation with its own fishing fleet. The national awakening from 1888 initially arose from a struggle to maintain the Faroese language and was thus culturally oriented, but after 1906 it became more political with the foundation of political parties of the Faroe Islands. In the first year of World War II, on the 12th of April 1940, British troops occupied the Faroe Islands, shortly after the Operation Weserübung with the Nazi German invasion of Denmark on the 9th of April 1940. In 1942 to 1943 the British Royal Engineers, under the leadership of Lieutenant Col. William Law MC, built the only airport in the Faroe Islands, Vagar Airport. Control of the islands reverted to Denmark following the war, but Danish rule had been undermined, and Iceland's independence served as a precedent for many Faroese. The 1946 Faroese independence referendum resulted in 73% in favor of independence to 27% against. The Faroe Islands subsequently declared independence on the 18th of September 1946. However, this declaration was annulled by Denmark on 20 September on the grounds that a majority of the Faroese voters had not supported independence, and King Christian X of Denmark dissolved the Faroese Lagting on 24 September. The dissolution of the Lagting was on 8 November, followed by the Faroese parliamentary election of 1946, in which the parties in favour of full independence received a total of 5,396 votes, while the parties against received a total of 7,488 votes. As a reaction to the growing self-government and independence movements, Denmark finally granted the Faroe Islands home rule with a high degree of local autonomy on the 30th of March 1948. The only significant uninhabited island is Litlagman. The islands are rugged and rocky with some low peaks. The coasts are mostly cliffs. The highest point is Sléttaretinda in northern Eysturoy, above sea level. The Faroe Islands are made up of approximately 6 kilometers thick succession of mostly basaltic lava, which was part of the Great North Atlantic Igneous Province during the Paleogene period. The lavas were erupted during the opening of the North Atlantic Ocean, which began about 60 million years ago, and what is today the Faroe Islands was then attached to Greenland. The lavas are underlain by circa 30 kilometers of unidentified ancient continental crust.
Climate.
The climate is classed as subpolar oceanic climate according to the Köppen climate classification, CFC, with areas having a tundra climate, especially in the mountains, although some coastal or low-lying areas can have very mild winter versions of a tundra climate. The overall character of the island's climate is influenced by the strong warming influence of the Atlantic Ocean, which produces the North Atlantic Current. This, together with the remoteness of any source of landmass-induced warm or cold airflows, ensures that winters are mild, mean temperature 0 to 40 degrees Celsius or 37 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit, while summers are cool, mean temperature 5 to 5 degrees Celsius or 49 to 51 degrees Fahrenheit. The islands are windy, cloudy and cool throughout the year, with an average of 210 rainy or snowy days per year. The islands lie in the path of depressions moving northeast, making strong winds and heavy rain possible at all times of the year. Sunny days are rare and overcast days are common. Hurricane Faith struck the Faroe Islands on the 5th of September 1966 with sustained winds over 100 miles per hour, 160 kilometers per hour, and only then did the storm cease to be a tropical system. The climate varies greatly over small distances, due to the altitude, ocean currents, topography and winds. Precipitation varies considerably throughout the archipelago. In some highland areas, snow cover can last for months, with snowfalls possible for the greater part of the year on the highest peaks. Summer snowfall is by no means rare, while in some sheltered coastal locations, several years pass without any snowfall whatsoever. Tórshavn receives frosts more often than other areas just a short distance to the south. Snow is also seen at a much higher frequency than on outlying islands nearby. The area receives on average 49 frosts a year. Winter recording began in 1891, and the warmest winter occurred in 2016-17 with an average temperature of 1 degree Celsius 43 degrees Fahrenheit.
Nature.
A collection of Faroese marine algae resulting from a survey sponsored by NATO, the British Museum Natural History and the Carlsberg Foundation, is preserved in the Ulster Museum catalogue numbers, F3195 F3307. It is one of 10 exoticity sets.
Flora.
The natural vegetation of the Faroe Islands is dominated by Arctic alpine plants, wildflowers, grasses, moss and lichen. Most of the lowland area is grassland and some is heath, dominated by shrubby heathers, mainly Calluna vulgaris. Among the herbaceous flora that occur in the Faroe Islands is the cosmopolitan marsh thistle, Circeum paluster. Although there are no trees native to the Faroe Islands, limited species were able to be successfully introduced to the region, including the black cottonwood, also known as the California poplar Populus strichocarpa. A few small plantations consisting of plants collected from similar climates such as Tierra del Fuego in South America and Alaska thrive on the islands.
Fauna.
The bird fauna of the Faroe Islands is dominated by seabirds and birds attracted to open land like heather. Probably because of the lack of woodland and other suitable habitats. Many species have developed special Faroese subspecies, common eider, common starling, Eurasian wren, common murre, and black guillemot. The pied raven, a color morph of the North Atlantic subspecies of the common raven, was endemic to the Faroe Islands, but has now become extinct. Only a few species of wildland mammals are found in the Faroe Islands today, all introduced by humans. 3 species are thriving on the islands today: mountain hare Lepus timidus, brown rat Rattus norvegicus, and the house mouse Mus musculus. Apart from these, there is a local domestic sheep breed, the Faroe sheep depicted on the coat of arms, and there once was a variety of feral sheep, which survived on Little Demon until the mid-19th century. Grey seals Halichoerus grypus are common around the shorelines. Several species of Cetacea live in the waters around the Faroe Islands. Best known are the long-finned pilot whales Globicephala melina, which are still hunted by the islanders in accordance with long-standing local tradition. Orcas or Sinus orca are regular visitors around the islands. The domestic animals of the Faroe Islands are a result of 1,200 years of isolated breeding. As a result, Many of the island's domestic animals are found nowhere else in the world. Faroese domestic breeds include Faeroe pony, Faeroe cow, Faeroe sheep, Faroese goose, and Faroese duck.
Politics and government.
The Faroese government holds executive power in local government affairs. The head of the government is called the Lagmath Chief Justice and serves as Prime Minister and head of Faroese government. Any other member of the cabinet is called a Landsstýrismaður, Ratari male minister of the Faroese government or Landsstýriskvinna, Ratfru female minister of the Faroese government. The Faroese parliament, the Lagting court of law, dates back to Viking times and is believed to be one of the oldest parliaments in the world. The parliament currently has 33 members. In contemporary times, elections are held at municipal, national Lagting and Danish Folketing levels. Until 2007, there were 7 electoral districts, each comprising a Sisla, while Strømøy was divided into a northern and southern part Tórshavn region. However, on the 25th of October 2007, changes were made such that the entire country is one electoral district, giving each vote equal weight.
Administrative divisions.
Administratively, the islands are divided into 29 municipalities within which there are 120 or so settlements. Traditionally, there are also the 6 Sislas similar to the British Shire: North Øya, Eysturoy, Strømøy, Vagar, Sandoy, and Suðuroy. Although today Sisla technically means police district, the term is still commonly used to indicate a geographical region. In earlier times, each Sisla had its own assembly, the so-called Varting Spring Assembly.
Relationship with Denmark.
The Faroe Islands have been under Norwegian, Danish control since 1388. The 1814 Treaty of Kiel terminated the Danish and Norwegian Union, and Norway came under the rule of the King of Sweden, while the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland remained Danish possessions. From ancient times the Faroe Islands had a parliament Lagting, which was abolished in 1816, and the Faroe Islands were to be governed as an ordinary Danish AMT county, with the Imtmand as its head of government. In 1851, the Lagting was reinstated, but, until 1948, served mainly as an advisory body. The islands are home to a notable independence movement that has seen an increase in popularity within recent decades. At the end of World War II, some of the population favored independence from Denmark, and on the 14th of September 1946, an independence referendum was held on the question of secession. It was a consultative referendum. The parliament was not bound to follow the people's vote. This was the first time that the Faroese people had been asked whether they favored independence or wanted to continue within the Danish kingdom. The result of the vote was a majority in favor of secession. The Speaker of the Lagting, together with the majority, started the process of becoming a sovereign nation. The minority of the Lagting left in protest, because they thought these actions were illegal. One parliament member, Jakob I. Jakobstovu, was shunned from his own party, the Social Democratic Party, because he joined the majority of the Lagting. The Speaker of the Lagting declared the Faroe Islands independent on the 18th of September 1946. On the 25th of September 1946, a Danish prefect announced to the Lagting that the king had dissolved the parliament, and wanted new elections, therefore not honoring the wish of the majority. A parliamentary election was held a few months later, in which the political parties that favored staying in the Danish kingdom increased their share of the vote and formed a coalition. Based on this, they chose to reject secession. Instead, a compromise was made and the Folketing passed a Home Rule law that went into effect in 1948. The Faroe Islands' status as a Danish AMT was thereby brought to an end. The Faroe Islands were given a high degree of self-governance, supported by a financial subsidy from Denmark to recompense expenses the islands have on Danish services. In protest to the new Home Rule Act, the Republic Party Jothvildi was founded. At present, the islanders are about evenly split between those favoring independence and those who prefer to continue as a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Within both camps there is a wide range of opinions. Of those who favor independence, Some are in favor of an immediate unilateral declaration of independence. Others see it as something to be attained gradually and with the full consent of the Danish government and the Danish nation. In the unionist camp there are also many who foresee and welcome a gradual increase in autonomy even while strong ties with Denmark are maintained. A new draft Faroese constitution is being drawn up. However, the draft has been declared by the Danish Prime Minister, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, as incompatible with Denmark's constitution, and if the Faroese political parties wish to continue with it, then they must declare independence.
Relationship with the European Union.
As explicitly asserted by both treaties of the European Union, the Faroe Islands are not part of the European Union. The Faroes are not grouped with the EU when it comes to international trade. For instance, when the EU and Russia imposed reciprocal trade sanctions on each other over the war in Donbass in 2014, the Faroes began exporting significant amounts of fresh salmon to Russia. Moreover, a protocol to the Treaty of Accession of Denmark to the European Communities stipulates that Danish nationals residing in the Faroe Islands are not considered Danish nationals within the meaning of the treaties. Hence, Danish people living in the Faroes are not citizens of the European Union, though other EU nationals living there remain EU citizens. The Faroes are not covered by the Schengen Agreement, but there are no border checks when travelling between the Faroes and any Schengen country. The Faroes have been part of the Nordic Passport Union since 1966. And since 2001 there have been no permanent border checks between the Nordic countries and the rest of the Schengen area as part of the Schengen Agreement.
Relationship with international organizations.
The Faroe Islands are not a fully independent country, but they do have political relations directly with other countries through agreement with Denmark. The Faroe Islands are a member of some international organizations as though they were an independent country. The Faroe Islands are a member of several international sports federations like UEFA, FIFA in football and FINA in swimming and EHF in handball, and have their own national teams. The Faroe Islands have their own telephone country code, internet country code, top-level domain, banking code and postal country code. The Faroe Islands make their own agreements with other countries regarding trade and commerce. When the EU embargo against Russia started in 2014, the Faroe Islands were not a part of the embargo because they are not a part of EU, and the islands had just themselves experienced a year of embargo from the EU, including Denmark against the islands. The Faroese Prime Minister Kajleo Johannesson went to Moscow to negotiate the trade between the two countries. The Faroese Minister of Fisheries negotiates with the EU and other countries regarding the rights to fish.
Demographics.
The vast majority of the population are ethnic Faroese, of Norse and Celtic descent. Recent DNA analyses have revealed that Y chromosomes, tracing male descent, are 87% Scandinavian. The studies show that mitochondrial DNA, tracing female descent, is 84% Celtic. There is a gender deficit of about 2,000 women owing to migration. As a result, some Faroese men have married women from the Philippines and Thailand, whom they met through such channels as online dating websites, and arranged for them to emigrate to the islands. This group of approximately 300 women make up the largest ethnic minority in the Faroes. The fertility rate is 2.409 children born per woman 2015est. The 2011 census shows that of the approximately 48,600 inhabitants of the Faroe Islands, 17,441 private households in 2011, 43,135 were born in the Faroe Islands, 3,597 were born in the other two countries of the Kingdom of Denmark or Greenland, and 1,614 were born outside the Kingdom of Denmark. People were also asked about their nationality, including Faroese. Children under 15 were not asked about their nationality. 97% said that they were ethnic Faroese, which means that many of those who were born in either Denmark or Greenland consider themselves as ethnic Faroese. The other 3% of those older than 15 said they were not Faroese, 515 were Danish, 433 were from other European countries, 147 came from Asia, 65 from Africa, 55 from the Americas, 23 from Russia. The Faroe Islands have people from 77 different nationalities. If the first inhabitants of the Faroe Islands were Irish monks, they must have lived as a very small group of settlers. Later, when the Vikings colonized the islands, there was a considerable increase in the population. However, it never exceeded 5,000 until the 19th century. Around 1349, about half the population perished in the Black Death Plague. Only with the rise of the deep-sea fishery and thus independence from agriculture in the island's harsh terrain and with general progress in the health service was rapid population growth possible in the Faroes. Beginning in the 19th century, the population increased tenfold in 200 years. At the beginning of the 1990s, the Faroe Islands entered a deep economic crisis leading to heavy emigration. However, this trend reversed in subsequent years to a net immigration. This has been in the form of a population replacement as young Faroese women leave and are replaced with Asian, Pacific brides. In 2011, there were 2,155 more men than women between the age of 0 to 59 in the Faroe Islands. The Faroese population is spread across most of the area. It was not until recent decades that significant urbanization occurred. Industrialization has been remarkably decentralized, and the area has therefore maintained quite a viable rural culture. Nevertheless, villages with poor harbor facilities have been the losers in the development from agriculture to fishing, and in the most peripheral agricultural areas, also known as Utoyga Outer Islands, there are few young people. In recent decades, the village-based social structure has nevertheless been placed under pressure, giving way to a rise in interconnected centers that are better able to provide goods and services than the badly connected periphery. This means that shops and services are now relocating en masse from the villages into the centers, and slowly but steadily the Faroese population is concentrating in and around the centers. In the 1990s, the government abandoned the old national policy of developing the villages by bygdemanning, and instead began a process of regional development okismanning. The term region referred to the large islands of the Faroes. Nevertheless, the government was unable to press through the structural reform of merging small rural municipalities to create sustainable, decentralized entities that could drive forward regional development. As regional development has been difficult on the administrative level, the government has instead invested heavily in infrastructure, interconnecting the regions. In general, it is becoming less valid to regard the Faroes as a society based on separate islands and regions. The huge investments in roads, bridges and subsea tunnels, see also transport in the Faroe Islands have bound the islands together, creating a coherent economic and cultural sphere that covers almost 90% of the population. From this perspective, it is reasonable to regard the Faroes as a dispersed city, or even to refer to it as the Faroese network city.
Language.
Faroese is spoken in the entire area as a first language. It is difficult to say exactly how many people worldwide speak the Faroese language, because many ethnic Faroese live in Denmark, and few who are born there return to the Faroes with their parents or as adults. Faroese belongs to the Germanic branch of Indo-European languages. Written Faroese grammar and vocabulary is most similar to Icelandic and to their ancestor Old Norse, though the spoken language is closer to Norwegian dialects of Western Norway. Faroese is the first official language of the island, while Danish, the second, is taught in schools and can be used by the Faroese government in public relations. The Faroe Islands Church Reformation was completed on the 1st of January 1540, according to official statistics from 2019, 79.7% of the Faroese population are members of the state church. The Church of the Faroe Islands Folkekirken, a form of Lutheranism. The Folkekirken became an independent church in 2007. Previously it had been a diocese within the Church of Denmark. Faroese members of the clergy who have had historical importance include Wenceslaus Ulricus Hammershøi (1819–1909), Fridtjof Petersen (1853–1917), and, perhaps most significantly, Jakob Dahl (1878–1944), who had a great influence in ensuring that the Faroese language was spoken in the church instead of Danish. Participation in churches is more prevalent among the Faroese population than among most other Scandinavians. In the late 1820s, the Christian evangelical religious movement, the Plymouth Brethren, was established in England. In 1865, a member of this movement, William Gibson Sloane, travelled to the Faroes from Shetland. At the turn of the 20th century, the Faroese Plymouth Brethren numbered 30. Today, around 10% of the Faroese population are members of the Open Brethren community Brothrazumcommon. About 3% belong to the charismatic movement. There are several charismatic churches around the islands, the largest of which, called Kelden the Spring, has about 200 to 300 members. About 2% belong to other Christian groups. The Adventists operate a private school in Tórshavn. Jehovah's Witnesses also have 4 congregations with a total of 121 members. The Roman Catholic congregation has about 170 members and falls under the jurisdiction of Denmark's Roman Catholic Diocese of Copenhagen. The municipality of Tórshavn has an old Franciscan school. There are also around 15 Baha'is who meet at 4 different places. The Ahmadiyas established a community in the Faroe Islands in 2010. Unlike Denmark, Sweden and Iceland with Fornsith, the Faroes have no organized hymn community. The best-known church buildings in the Faroe Islands include Tórshavn Cathedral, Olaf II of Norway's Church and the Magnus Cathedral in Kirkjuba, the Vestkirkjen and the Maria Church, both of which are situated in Tórshavn, the Church of Famjin, the Octagonal Church in Halldórsvík, Christianskirkjen in Klaksvík, and also the 2 pictured here. In 1948, Victor Danielson Plymouth Brethren completed the first Bible translation into Faroese from different modern languages. Jacob Dahl and Christian Osvald Videra Folkakirkjen completed the second translation in 1961. The latter was translated from the original biblical languages Hebrew and Greek into Faroese. According to the 2011 census, there were 33,018 Christians, 95. 44%, 23 Muslims 0. 7%, 7 Hindus 0. 2%, 66 Buddhists 0. 19%, 12 Jews 0. 3%, 13 Baha'i 0. 4%, 3 Sikhs 0. 1%, 149 others 0. 43%, 85 with more than one belief 0. 25%, and 1,397 with no religion 4%.
Education.
The levels of education in the Faroe Islands are primary, secondary and higher education. Most institutions are funded by the state. There are few private schools in the country. Education is compulsory for 9 years between the ages of 7 and 16. Compulsory education consists of 7 years of primary education and 2 years of lower secondary education. It is public, free of charge, provided by the respective municipalities, and is called the Fótboltaskúli in Faroese. The Fótboltaskúli also provides optional preschool education as well as the 10th year of education that is a prerequisite to get admitted to upper secondary education. Students that complete compulsory education are allowed to continue education in a vocational school, where they can have job-specific training and education. Since the fishing industry is an important part of country's economy, maritime schools are an important part of Faroese education. Upon completion of the 10th year of Fótboltaskúli, students can continue to upper secondary education, which consists of several different types of schools. Higher education is offered at the University of the Faroe Islands. A part of Faroese youth moves abroad to pursue higher education, mainly in Denmark. Other forms of education comprise adult education and music schools. The structure of the Faroese educational system bears resemblances with its Danish counterpart. The Church of Denmark took over education after the Protestant Reformation. Modern educational institutions started operating in the last quarter of the 19th century and developed throughout the 20th century. The status of the Faroese language in education was a significant issue for decades, until it was accepted as a language of instruction in 1938. Initially, education was administered and regulated by Denmark. Since the Faroe Islands is a part of the Danish realm, education in the Faroe Islands is influenced and has similarities with the Danish educational system. There is an agreement on educational cooperation between the Faroe Islands and Denmark. In 2012, the public spending on education was 1% of GDP. The municipalities are responsible for the school buildings for children's education in Folkeskolen from age 1st grade to 9th or 10th grade, age 7 to 16. In November 2013, 1,615 people, or 6.8% of the total number of employees, were employed in the education sector. There is no data on literacy in the Faroe Islands, but the CIA Factbook states that it is probably as high as in Denmark proper, i.e. 99%. The majority of students in upper secondary schools are women, although men represent the majority in higher education institutions. In addition, most young Faroese people who relocate to other countries to study are women. Out of 8,535 holders of bachelor degrees, 4,796 2% have had their education in the Faroe Islands, 2,724 9% in Denmark, 543 in both the Faroe Islands and Denmark, 94 1% in Norway, 80 in the United Kingdom and the rest in other countries. Out of 1,719 holders of master's degrees or PhDs, 1,249 7% have had their education in Denmark, 1% in the United Kingdom, 5% in both the Faroe Islands and Denmark, 7% in the Faroe Islands, 5% in Norway and the rest in other countries, mostly EU and Nordic.
Economy.
Economic troubles caused by a collapse of the Faroese fishing industry in the early 1990s brought high unemployment rates of 10 to 15% by the mid-1990s. Unemployment decreased in the later 1990s, down to about 6% at the end of 1998. The unemployment was 3.2%. Nevertheless, the almost total dependence on fishing and fish farming means that the economy remains vulnerable. One of the biggest private companies of the Faroe Islands is the salmon farming company Bakkafrost, which is the largest of the 4 salmon farming companies in the Faroe Islands and the 8th biggest in the world. Petroleum found close to the Faroese area gives hope for deposits in the immediate area, which may provide a basis for sustained economic prosperity. 13% of the Faroe Islands' national income comes as economic aid from Denmark. This corresponds to roughly 5% of GDP. Since 2000, the government has fostered new information technology and business projects to attract new investment. The introduction of Burger King in Tórshavn was widely publicized as a sign of the globalization of Faroese culture. It remains to be seen whether these projects will succeed in broadening the island's economic base. The islands have one of the lowest unemployment rates in Europe, but this should not necessarily be taken as a sign of a recovering economy, as many young students move to Denmark and other countries after leaving high school. This leaves a largely middle-aged and elderly population that may lack the skills and knowledge to fill newly developed positions on the Faroes. Nonetheless, in 2008 the Faroes were able to make a $52 million loan to Iceland to help with that country's banking woes. On the 5th of August 2009, 2 opposition parties introduced a bill in the Lagting to adopt the euro as the national currency, pending a referendum.
Transport.
By road, the main islands are connected by bridges and tunnels. Government-owned Strandfaraskiplandsins provides public bus and ferry service to the main towns and villages. There are no railways. By air, Scandinavian Airlines and the government-owned Atlantic Airways both have scheduled international flights to Vagar Airport, the island's only airport. Atlantic Airways also provides